Welcome to Wide Flank.
All right, welcome to Wide Flank. Been a while. We're back in action. I guess this is what we're kind of doing now is like we're starting with Legend of Zelda, Ocarina of Time, playing it by ear, seeing if we're going to we don't even know if we're going to keep playing it or just stop here. We haven't finished the game yet. We're in the beginning of the game, I would say. And this might be the new direction Wide Flank goes, might not be. Who cares? We're taking it from there. We're playing Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time from 1998. Everyone knows it. I got Dugan on.
What's up?
What's up, Dugan?
What's up, Alon? Good to be here. Glad to talk about one of the most formative games of all time. People in kind of our age demographic. This is probably one of the first big adventure open worlds, sort of like puzzle-based games that they've really played. So yeah, really exciting to talk about it today.
Definitely one of the things that immediately popped was just like, wow, I thought this game was so much bigger. Because I haven't played it since 1998. Like you just even saying open world now is almost like a joke because compared to contemporary open world games, this is like a dot on a map. But like when you're a kid and you play this, I remember going to Hyrule Field be like, holy shit. Like this is like almost too much for my 11-year-old brain to handle. I could do anything and there's too much going on.
Yeah, it's kind of a farce to call it an open world game in 2024, but we'll get there.
Yeah,
I have a lot of thoughts on that.
Yeah. So when did you play this game first time?
Yeah, so I played this game. It must have been in '98. Like I was trying to think of the actual chronology of it. Coming into this episode. But I must have played it at some point in '98. I don't think I actually had a Nintendo 64 yet in '98. My parents were kind of like they would rent one here and there, like when they would have like a party on the weekends and wanted to like distract me and my
that's
brothers
such a
really
good
well.
idea. Holy shit.
But they didn't sort of like jump off the deep end and like get us one full time. So we had a bunch of friends obviously who had them back then. And I remember distinctly one of my good friends who I would often go over to his place to play Nintendo 64 had this game. And I remember like thumbing through the like book that came in the box and thinking like, this looks really cool. There's like pictures of the map. There's like pictures of like the different like races in the world. And like the artwork is like beautiful. It's like all this like hand-drawn stuff. And I remember thinking like, this is insane. Like, why don't we play this game? We were like playing, like Mario 64 and Star Fox and, Mario Kart and, some of the more like accessible games as a 8-year-old kid can play. And I remember his reaction to me was like, oh, it's like really hard. And I was like, oh, that's okay. I didn't understand, right? I had never plugged it in. I'd never popped it in. So, I just kind of took it at face value and didn't get a chance to like really play much with him. Kind of fast forward to one of the times that my parents rented an N64 and we decided to pick up this game because I was like really invested and really like thinking about this artwork, thinking about this world that my friend was like, we can't explore it. It's too difficult. I like popping it in for the first time. And I just remember like getting into the forest and like getting around and exploring. I'm not going to butcher the name of it, Kakariko Forest, I guess.
Whatever.
Which makes me laugh because then there's a Kakariko village. Great naming there. But I remember getting around and exploring and being like, dude, this is awesome. This is beautiful. This is so cool. This is my first exposure to like an adventure game at this scale, at this capacity. And kind of to your point earlier, and I think that this is going to be a really interesting common theme, of today's episode, but maybe of the game in general, is it feels like there is so much going on. And for a game that came out in 1998, maybe that is actually the case, like relative to like other games.
Yeah, I think so.
But ultimately, a lot of it is like kind of empty, kind of repetitive, kind of it's not as dense as it feels. But I think that there's a really fun angle to that where like it's easy to look back at this game against all of the games that have come out, all of the games that we've played since then and say like, oh, this is a really empty game. And forget that like when you're for me, it was 8. For you, I guess you were 12 in 98 or 12-ish. That like what you're kind of doing is you're going into this world where you don't really have a deep understanding of what the systems are. and you're sort of applying, logic and rationale to what's happening, and almost like creating micro narratives, like your sort of explanations as to like why something is gated the way it is, or why something is set up the way it is, or why a character is like, in the world doing this thing. Whether it's the little guard guys in front of the tree portals, like, oh, you can't come here unless you have a sword and shield. Like, why is this his mission? Like,
Yeah.
you can't leave the forest. It's like, why are all the like fairy kids supposed to always be here and never leave? And
it also feels dated. I like those little things to me. Like I have like my notes from when I was like playing. We only play it up until basically when you meet Zelda at the castle. So we only played like how long? A couple hours, I would say. Like maybe
if you're
an hour and a half or something.
Mainlining that, I feel like that's like a 30 to 45 minutes.
You could do it in 10 minutes probably, because the game's so ridiculously easy, which is something I want to talk to you about also. But like, those little gated things of like, oh, I thought I could just go to this area, but I have to like go do this dumbass task. Like that shit feels so dated to me, where it's just like games now have just like stopped doing that to you because it's stupid and annoying. Even though like back then it felt like, I think that back then when, game designers were making stuff, they were like, we have to hold their hand through every single thing. Like we have to have a literal fairy that like is basically an alarm clock. And if you're ever not doing the task you're supposed to do, the fairy is going to say like, hey, listen. And I'm going to tell you exactly what you're supposed to do. Because that's like, that's just what they thought of, I guess, gamers or kids who are buying this game back then. But playing it now, I do find, because I haven't played it since '98, so I don't really remember stuff in the sense of like, oh, this little puzzle, I know exactly how to do it. But at the same time, it's like, it's so easy and dated now that I'm just like one of my notes is like, was this hard just because I was a dumb kid?
That's exactly a question I wanted to ask you.
But like, it's so like the first boss when you're in the Deku tree, and I guess that's kind of like a dungeon, and you go into the tree's mouth and you have to fight through or whatever. I was just like, are you kidding me? Like, this is a complete joke. Like, am I on easy mode? What is this?
Yeah, no, that was a question that I was really interested to get your take on, because obviously we're still pretty early in the game, but I think the kind of part of the game that we played for this episode is really representative of the like, I am a child, not a child in the game, but a child playing this game.
Yeah.
And how much of this is like, is it actually really unique solutions to these puzzles that, represent a deviation from anything that you've ever experienced before? Whether that's, getting into the Deku tree, whether that's, jumping off the top floor.
Oh my God.
To fall through the spider web, which is this like awesome moment.
Yeah, when you're a kid, that's probably just like, holy fuck, I know what to do. Yeah.
It blows your mind. And I think the thing that's also really like cool about that within the context of the history of like this game and this console, is it shows that the game design is really invested in leveraging the 3D space that this game exists in. Which is obviously, this is the first 3D Zelda title.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of excitement in, leveraging mechanics in that way. But discovering that, I feel like, was like completely mind blowing to me as a kid. And then the same with there's another moment in the bottom of the Deku tree where you light your stick, you jump across the pathway after having pushed the block down, and then you have to push R or L or whatever to like crouch over other spider web. And I remember that being this thing that is just like as a kid, when you realize that that's what you have to do, like you get over, you make the jump, you don't mess it up, your fire's still in. You're like, what do I do? How do I do? As an adult, you're just like, okay, I'll just like push every button while I'm around here.
It's very much like when you're a kid playing this, you're like learning to walk in video games, sort of like you're learning to use like muscles you've never used before. Not that we're coming from, Pong. But we're coming from like 2D flat platformers. Like I don't even remember what games were popular, like, in 97, 6.5 or whatever, but they were much simpler games, I think. And like using that brain power to like do those things that you're talking about was novel at the time. But I couldn't help but, not that I'm like a Dark Souls guy, but like I played Bloodborne. That's my only connection to the series. But while I was playing this game, I couldn't help but think like, oh, I kind of understand like making Dark Souls. Like growing up, and this is like, he's older than us, but like this being the most popular game in the world and like unanimous best game ever made. Like this is glam rock, and like Dark Souls is punk. Just being like, fuck all that shit. Like, this is cheesy, corny. Like, forget about all these tutorials, all this shit. I just want you to like die in the most gnarly ways. Because, yeah, like I don't know. Maybe it gets harder or more confusing, but like, holy shit, it's so childish and easy. But it's also just, I think you can't talk about this game without using the word nostalgia. But just like, every moment of a music cue, even from like the opening sequence, like press start to start a new game, where you just hear the horse and then the music like sort of fades in. It's just like, oh my god, this is the greatest music ever written. Like it's just like unbelievably beautiful, and it is full of those kind of moments. Even though among that, it's really like easy and corny and kind of stupid. It's like it's still reels you back in, I find.
Yeah, to your point about the sort of like this being the sort of like way predecessor of Dark Souls, or really any
3D action game, really, right? Yeah,
it feels like as I came back into this, my most recent experience with this game was watching Nolan play a randomizer on his stream.
Shout out to Nolan.
Yeah, shout out to Nolan, Calamity Nolan in Wide Flank. And I was talking to him about this, and I was like, yeah, what I realized watching your randomizer, and he ended up in a situation where like he didn't have a sword for like multiple temples.
Yeah.
I was like, what I realized watching your randomizer is this isn't a combat game. It's just like not a game about the combat.
Not at all. Not at all.
And his response was actually surprising to me. He was like, actually, it is a combat game, and the combat is really good. Relative to the time, of course, like Z targeting is obviously like very innovative. It gives you this like really cool anchor point for like dodging sideways and attacking forwards and doing backflips, and
that's totally novel. Yeah,
it's very cinematic and exciting. And the reason why I feel like it's not a combat game is because a lot of the combat is optional to some extent, right? Like, there are things in dungeons you have to kill, but you're running around the main world, like you can ignore like all of the enemies, really.
Yeah, pretty much.
There's no sort of like experience grind. The items that you get aren't like super valuable. There comes a point where you max out the quantity of Deku nuts and sticks and that kind of stuff that you have, and your wallet is only so big, so it's not really valuable to find too many rupees or anything like that. But the point that he made is like you think about a movie like Evil Dead or something like that. You go back and watch Evil Dead today, and you're like, wow, this movie is like incredibly low budget and just does like all the things that like zombie movies do all the time. And it's like, well, yeah, but zombie movies weren't doing this when Evil Dead came out.
Totally.
So that's the way to kind of think about the combat system, I think. Whereas on the one hand, like it's easy to be like, oh, this is like really easy and straightforward and like not as complex as modern. Of course not. But this was setting the precedent for those games. And I'm glad you brought that up with Souls-like games. Because it does have that sort of feel of like understanding the rhythm of enemies and what their sort of tendencies are and how to exploit those things.
Yeah, totally. And like I think it's hard to, when there's so much like nostalgia and context, I think it's hard to sort of place like I was questioning like, is this good? Like while I was playing, I was like, is this fun? Is this good? Like and it's nice, I think, to be in the world, but it's also just like, it's impossible for me to ever critique this game, I think, like accurately. I don't know if that's the right word, but like I'm so Pavlovian, right? It's like I can be like in a temple and I'm like, this is stupid as hell. Like this is like a waste of time. And then I discover a little secret and I'm like, oh my god, like washes over me like I'm fucking 5 again playing, like because I started with the NES games, right? So like going into this when I was like 11, 12, it wasn't just that it was like a meaningful game for me. It was also like holy shit, I've beaten Link to the Past, I've beaten the NES game. Like, this is like the game for me. Like, I've been waiting my whole life to be this age when this game comes out. You know what I mean? And it was just like the culmination of all of it. But yeah, I mean, it's, we're really early, and I think we're gonna keep playing, and we're gonna do another episode or two while we're still playing, and then an episode at the end of it, and we'll talk more about the music and all of this shit. But it's nice to get in there a little bit, and it's fun to play, and it's fun to take notes. And even though the controls fucking suck, and I'm on my laptop, and I think you're playing also on your laptop, and it's like, oh my god, who I wouldn't blow for like a mouse look or something like that. Like, that's all I want in the world, is to be able to look around with a mouse. But it's still nice to be there, and there are little things I remember, even though it was so long ago. There's like, I mean, it's not that it's not like a secret. Like, the opening sequence of the game, there's like horses and stuff. But I'm like, I remember that you get a horse, and I have an ocarina now, and I'm pretty sure there's a song I can play that calls my horse, and I can't fucking wait for that. But like, I'm not sure, and so it's just, it's exciting, and it's nice to dive in with a game that like you're familiar with, but you don't really remember all the ins and outs.
Yeah, I think that's a good segue. So obviously you go through kind of the initial forest situation, finding your sword and shield, beating the Deku tree, beating the comically easy boss that I feel like I remember handing the controller to like an older brother or something to beat at one point. Like
beyond easy. Like, if you've ever played any game, it's easy. But if this is like your first game, it's probably hard.
Also a boss which highlights 3D space, because the Queen Goma ends up on the ceiling, and you can shoot them off in order to stun them, which is pretty cool. So you get through all of that sort of experience. You get through some like awkward abstract story talk from the tree, and then you get to one of my favorite moments in the game, which is also incredibly awkward, where Saria gives you the ocarina as you're leaving the forest, as you're bailing from the forest. And she like gives you this gift and is like so happy to like share it with you. And then Link just like takes 2 steps backward and does this like most awkward runaway ever. It's just like, I'm not gonna thank you. I'm not gonna say anything. I'm out of here.
You're still a girl, so I'm not gonna talk to you. But
exactly. And then you enter, the open world, which we've already alluded to. As a kid, feels like this like really vast, lively place. And then as someone who has played games for, oh god, I just tried to do the math. 25-ish years since this came out. It doesn't feel that way. So the question that I kind of wanted to ask you, and the reason why I wanted to sort of highlight the first episode as the things that lead up to Zelda and exploring in that regard, is because I think this is actually really representative of what playing this game as a kid was like. Because once you've gotten into this big open space, like now it's easy to say like Navi won't like shut the hell up about where you're supposed to go, and like the fucking owl, which we could do a whole episode on the owl. Wherever you go, anywhere, he like comes up. He's like, "Hey, hoot, you should go to the castle. That's exactly where you should go. Why aren't you going to the castle yet? Did you hear what I said, or did you not hear what I said?" And they invert the yes, no, it's amazing. Like, I remember hating that, but it's so cute. Like, and such a fun way to do dialogue.
Like playing on a keyboard, at least I have the problem of like, I don't know which button is which. I'm just kind of used to press, right? And like, so half the conversations I have with people like in the castle or whatever, I accidentally skip the entire thing. And then I'm like, oh, fucking I have to talk to them again. And then you talk to them again and they don't say anything useful. It's like, oh my God.
Yeah. So you get to this point, and this is where I'm really curious what you did with this exploration time, because I think that this part of the game is like a microcosm of what it was like to play this game as a kid. Because unless you sort of understand how to solve the like cuckoo puzzle with Talon and where to go to do that and how to get past the guards, which is kind of stressful when you're a kid, like kind of sneaking around like that. It's super easy, obviously, once you know the pathing, but it feels very stressful to sort of like get in there and like really progress with the story.
Yeah.
What my experience was like with this game was like going to these different areas, kind of testing the limitations of the gate, the gates that exist across the world.
Yeah.
So I'm curious how you felt about that. Did you feel like it was like not very fun? Was it futile? Did you find something that excited you? Like,
yeah, it was cool. I mean, I liked running around. I was maybe impressed is the word I was looking for, that like there's night and day and different things happen. I was like, oh wow, like that feels like something that's newer than 1998 to me, of like, oh man, it's night and now the skeleton fucks are out and there's these like spinning fucking death things that follow you around.
Terrifying.
Dude, what the fuck are those spinning death dicks that just like are run your exact same speed that you run, so you're just rolling away from them hoping to not die?
Pretty sure I never killed one of those as a kid. I was like so terrified.
Don't know how to kill them. I have no idea. I just ran. But yeah, I mean, I found it to be cool and fun. I mean, eventually I just was like, all right, I'm just gonna go to the castle because I can't actually figure out anything that I can actually do, other than just kind of run around. I did try and like go through the water and stuff. I was like, I think I have to like sneak into the castle, but I was like ahead of myself. It's like, no, you can just go into the castle, then you have to sneak to Zelda. But I was like trying to sneak into the castle. I was like, I thought there's like a
open world.
In the open world, I was like, you talk to someone and someone says something about like a drain that they couldn't fit through or something. I was like, oh shit, I have to like go through the water to get to Zelda. Couldn't remember. But there are also hints to like that good nectar that you get in this game from time to time, where like you go to the Temple of Time and it doesn't do anything yet because you're a kid and don't have any stuff or the stones or whatever, but it's so sick. Like there's so many things in this game that are just like stupid, dumb, childish, old, dated. And I don't mean stupid even in a bad way. I just mean like silly. And then there's the other side of the coin, which is like, like Temple of Time or like the, parts with the music cues and whatever, where it's just like, oh my God, like I can't wait till I like access this because I know this is like the real, and even just the thematically, I think there's a lot of like, surprising to me, the amount of like gloominess there is, sort of like, I kind of remember this just being like a happy game. You run around and, talk to people and go through temples and it's easy and whatever, but it's like kind of dark at moments in ways that I didn't remember. There's like nightmares about Ganondorf and he's like fucking creepy and weird, and the music gets dark at some points, and
the enemies are also like quite scary.
Yeah, they are. Like, they're gnarly.
This first moment where you're out at nighttime in this beautiful field, and then all of a sudden, like skeletons just come up never endingly.
They just pop up. Yeah, you kill two, and then two more pop up, and you're like, oh my God, like again, this is like, I could see someone making Dark Souls after this game being like, it should be gnarlier, it should be dark all the time. But yeah, overall, I thought the open world was cool, and then I, got sick of it after not that long because it's not that big and there's not that much to explore, and the owl keeps fucking interrupting me, so I just eventually went to the castle. But it's cool.
There's a couple things you can do at this point in the game.
I'm sure
that
there's
stood out to me.
Million things I'm missing, secrets and stuff.
And I didn't say this at the kickoff, but like I know I like remember this game like the back of my hand. Like I feel like most people from that era do.
More recently, right?
The last time I played it in full or in full-ish was, I think, in college. So that would have been like 12 years. It was like one of the first things I did when I like got an apartment of my own, is I just like, okay, cool, we're plugging in N64 and like every day after class we're gonna come home and play this. Like,
that's a big difference between us, I think. It's like you remember all the little specific things. And I've only ever played this as an 11-year-old with my friend Kai after school every day until we beat it. That's it.
Yeah. So the things that jumped out to me about this sort of sequence are fishing at Lake Hylia. If you did that,
did not do that.
you can do it at any point, obviously, but is very fun. Is sort of my first exposure to like a fishing mini game, which has become
Final Fantasy.
I think, yeah, kind of quintessential, especially in Japanese games.
Oh, it's true. Yeah, it's sick in Hades too. Love fishing. Yeah,
sick in Hades, sick in Final Fantasy 15.
Yeah,
for those who ever played that game. Other stuff, the Cuckoo puzzle in Kakariko Village. Not sure if you did that. So you get this lady has lost all of her chickens. They're all around the village and whatever, and kind of hard to get to. You have to like leverage flying with the cuckoos, which is a really fun mechanic if you pick them up and like jump off of something. That's actually a funny thing that I'm going to go on a tangent about real quick. One of the most fascinating things about the control scheme of this game is that you cannot jump. Which I think is so funny for a third-person game.
Funny. Yeah.
Like obviously you can jump off of ledges and you get some sort of like momentum that way, but there's not just a button to jump, which I remember being.
It's all just for those who don't remember. It's all just programmed that basically if there's a thing to jump onto or off of, you just approach it and then the action happens. So if there's something. I definitely ran into this situation and was laughing about it, where it's like I want to like walk up to something but not like jump on it. But if you get too close, the game's just like, okay, you're jumping on it, and then you jump, and you're just like, wait, no, I just want to like go to this thing and then press the button.
I want to be next to it.
Yeah, exactly. I want to be next to the thing, not jump on top of it. You have like no control.
And then there's like graveyard digging, which obviously I have the graveyard as my background right now. This is one of the areas that I really loved growing up, just because it really leverages the difference between night and day. During the day, there's a kid there who, like, if you try to like dig up any graves, he gets mad at you. Okay. He's like, I'll tell the grave digger if you're gonna be messing around here. But you come back at night and you can just like pull the graves open and go into them and like find treasure and another terrifying enemy, which you will probably remember vividly, but I won't spoil that one.
Okay. I'll have to like go back and do these things maybe, because I didn't do any of these things.
Yeah. There are things you can do whenever, but there are things that are, unlocked as of getting access to like highly field. And then the other thing that I wanted to call out, I don't know if you got the Hylian shield yet.
I think I did.
You can buy it at the store, the bazaar in Castletown, Town Square. I can't remember what it's called.
Market or whatever.
Market Town. Marketplace.
Something like that. Yeah.
Something. You can buy it there. And I think that this is one of the most interesting items in the game for one big reason. It's sort of the item that transcends, but also plays on the fact that you are a kid at points in this game and also an adult.
Okay.
Because you equip the shield as a kid, and it's like comically big, right?
It's
like
ridiculously big, yeah.
And you lose the ability to like shield standing up and like dodge and shield while you're using it. So in a lot of situations, like it's actually more effective to use the other shield as a kid, but it's just like so adorable and starts to play to this notion that there's like time within the game and that time's going to be relevant at some point. So I think that that's really, really cute and cheeky and sort of like in the theme of what they're trying to establish.
It's so iconic too. Mm-hmm. The shield itself is like a logo almost of just like, that's Zelda. That's Mappy. That's Mippy. What's the treat that you like again? That's Chappy.
That's Chappy. Yeah, that's Chappy. That's
Mappy,
Zelda.
Mippy. What is it again?
No worries, just inside jokes. But and then like beyond that, there are like other little things you can do. Obviously, you can like talk to anyone. There's some like different like arcadey games you can play. There's allusions to your point about like the Temple of Time. There's allusions to a bunch of these things that like will be available.
Yeah.
In terms of like once you do a couple more things, they will be ungated, or you find the right item, they will be ungated. But I think one of the other things that's like really exciting about this time in the game, from the perspective of playing it as a kid, is because it's not clear. Obviously, looking back on it, it's so clear what you're supposed to do next, but because it's like not clear what to do, or it's like kind of fiddly to figure out that you like actually have to like take the chicken out next to Talon to wake him up.
That was kind of confusing.
That's pretty confusing and was really confusing as a kid. you start to sort of like explore and create your own like narratives and mini games. And some of the ones that I like vividly remember were like staying out all night and fighting skeletons.
Yeah, I 100% did that because I was like, I'm not sure where to go, what to do, and then it just becomes night, and you're just like, okay, I'm just gonna kill all the skeletons, I guess, and like, yeah.
And then like sort of like passing the controller between people playing. It's like, okay, it's your turn to try to survive the night, like that sort of thing, or trying to test the limitations of the gates without the knowledge that they're like completely unlockable, right? Like totally. One of the ones that jumps out to me, and I don't know if you went to this area, is you go to Gerudo Valley, and there's the like broken bridge. You like can't even cross to like the Gerudo village or whatever. And as a kid, I think you look at this and you're like, there has to be a way that I can jump across this bridge, right? Yeah. And there's not. There's straight up not. You need either the hook shot or well, spoilers. The hook shot or the horse, I think, are the two ways to get in.
I've played Zeldas before, yeah.
You need something to get in there. And so you like try to jump across or try to find a way to make it out, and you just end up like falling in a river that like funnels you into Lake Hylia, where you can do some things in Lake Hylia, whether it's fishing or going into the creepy dude's like laboratory, or not that you can do anything in there, but you can go in at least. Yeah. So you start to sort of like create these mini games of exploration, of testing the systems with fighting the chickens. Also is another one that comes to mind. Like if you hit a chicken, they become the most powerful thing in the game for some reason. I don't know why. I think they're trying to minimize animal abuse. But all these different things started to funnel, I feel like, into the like play we had outside of the game. Yeah. Like I have this really vivid memory of back with the same friend who said this game was too hard, after I demonstrated to him that it wasn't too hard by, I don't know, getting through the first very easy temple. Like we'd be like playing in his backyard because his parents would tell us to like stop playing video games. And we'd like go over, and there's like his dad had like a big pile of like wood that he chopped up to like put in a fire or whatever. And we'd be like, okay, cool. We're like a wood shop smith thing in this universe. Like how cool is like the most like boring, mundane stuff you could imagine, but you start to be like, but I'm a fairy kid with ears and a fairy, and
totally
I'm within the universe of Zelda. All of a sudden this like super mundane thing, we've like applied this logic to it that makes it cool, that makes it exist in this alternative fantastical reality.
Yeah, and ultimately that's the great achievement. I mean, 2 hours into the game, that feels like the great achievement of this game, and why it's like still considered such a good game is that world and the aesthetics and stuff that are created, that even though a lot of the gameplay stuff is dated and a lot of the open world stuff isn't open world, and it's too easy and yada yada yada, it's still just sick to be there. It's just like fun and nice to be there. And I'm not like coming home from work every day being like, holy shit, I can't wait to queue up Ocarina of Time at all. But at the same time, when I do, there's always going to be something that I love in whenever I play it, even if the majority of it is like, is what it is.
Yeah. So I think that gets us, I think pretty close to the end of what this session was. Did you end up?
Let's talk about what we're gonna do next. So what were you gonna say?
I was gonna say, did you end up talking to Zelda?
Yeah, I did. So I'm like ready to go to the next zone, and I think start the real dungeons. I think is where the game's about to like begin. There's been already multiple times, even in my notes, where I'm like, okay, like the adventure's about to begin, and then like I do some stupid ass task, and I'm like, okay, now the adventure begins. But I think now is like around when you're like, okay, yeah, I remember there being like different dungeons and stuff like that, and you have to beat all of them or whatever. And I think that's kind of where I am now, and we're gonna play some amount of dungeons and then maybe pod again, I think is what you were thinking, right?
So my thought here, to break this game up fairly logically, is the next pod will be about the next 3 dungeons. Cool. I'm not going to be more specific than that because you forget what they're like, and I don't want to spoil that for you or anyone who has that totally weird, non-common experience of not knowing this game like the
Not
back of their hand.
remembering the game, yeah.
So it'll be the next 3 dungeons, a whole host of things to talk about alongside of that. Like I want to talk a little bit more about the ocarina and songs and how dynamic, the songwriting is, considering that they only give you 5 notes. But since I imagine you only have Zelda's Lullaby, we'll save that one for next time.
Yeah, I do. All right, rock and roll. Well, thank you, Dugan. Thank you, everyone, for listening. We'll be back for episode 2 at some point.
Yeah, thanks for having me. See you all later.